If you've ever found yourself doing something that just makes no sense and you know it's not good for you, and yet you can't seem to make yourself stop, this story might help you. So I had this conversation with my husband last week where he asked me if I realized how much money I had spent on my whole fashion and styling journey. So over the last 3 months or so, I've been really focused on upping my whole style game. Now, his question of, do you know how much you've spent, immediately put me in this like nervous state, because I'm like, oh fudge. And yes, I have a rough idea. I don't track it like super closely. I'm not one of those people who's ever woken up every day and checked my bank account immediately like how some of my friends be doing. That's just never been who I am. You know, right off the bat, his question makes me uncomfortable. And before you guys come for me, just know, oh my God, maybe this is telling that I'm almost like froggy voice trying to talk about this. By the way he's asking that question, I already know that this is going to go into territory that I'm not going to like. And yet at the same time, I know that I've been spending a lot of time on this, a lot of money on this, and him asking me like, do you know how much you've been spending? Do you have an idea? And don't you think you might need some more moderation here? Something really weird happened. I felt this heat wave come over my body, and I started to feel like that sort of shaky feeling inside. And then I could feel my eyes start to burn because I was about to cry. And look, the thing about me is that I'm not usually a crier in conversation. I try very hard not to cry. It's not because I'm ashamed of crying. I have no problems being vulnerable. It's just that I work hard to keep my emotions managed. So I don't believe in stuffing down your emotions, but I do work hard in keeping my emotions regulated. And sometimes that might mean I have to cry. Now, what I realized, though, is that when I do cry, that is a signal. Like, that is a major signal. So if you are in a situation and you feel tears coming, that is because your body is trying to send you a message. Okay, it is trying to tell you something. There is information processing in the background for you, mentally, emotionally, and physically. And it happens that the physical tends to often be the first sign that clues us in that something is going on. So yes, when you notice yourself having a very strong physical reaction, whether it's tears, whether it's nausea, that's a sign, like look deeper in yourself. What the heck is going on? Now, what's really interesting is that I have ADHD and my husband is as neurotypical as it gets. For many of us ADHDers, we experience emotions more strongly. There seems to be some lack of emotional regulation going on. I don't really know exactly why. I haven't really looked into it yet, but I will. So you'll probably see a video from this coming eventually. Anyway, me being ADHD and my husband not has taught us on a real basic fundamental level, the lesson. The number one trap that I think we all fall into is that we assume other people out there think like us. We assume other people see the world the same way we do, and they don't. So to my husband, all of my behavior often looks like a choice I'm making, a choice that just doesn't make sense to him. To me, I'm often doing things that I may not fully understand, but I'm trying to understand. And at this point in my journey, I can usually say that I have some good idea, which is why I experience a lot fewer this like emotional turbulence that I think many ADHDers are prone to experiencing. So if you know that you tend to suffer from strong emotional swings and your friends or your family have said the same about you, it's probably something around this. You have not learned to regulate your emotions because you haven't actually learned what is motivating these behaviors you do. And instead, you probably run away and avoid, like most of us do, like I myself used to do. And when you run away and you avoid, it only increases the feelings of guilt and embarrassment and shame. So I remember the day when my husband and I sat him down for a talk because he was just so frustrated with me. And I showed him what goes through my mind, because he's always thinking that I'm doing these things from a place of intent, and I'm not. It's like that's a hilarious thing, is that a lot of these times, especially with people who have some sort of neurodivergence or just people who are unaware, they have no idea why they're doing the things they do. When I told him what went through my mind, he was shook. He was honestly shook. It was hilarious, and I can share that story with you some other time. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because this whole fashion journey, having this conversation with my husband, made me confront and realize the fact that it started with shame. So, I come to that final realization. That was the breakthrough, is that I have felt ugly for most of my life, and that's just something that I don't think he will ever fully grasp, not in here, to actually say the words aloud, because I don't think I'd ever said this before, is like, I've spent most of my life feeling ugly. And that was fucking brutal. Like, that was just so brutal. It's like, for me to tell my husband, like, I feel ugly, was one of the hardest things I've ever said. In September of last year, so I occasionally speak at events, and I would like to speak at more. But at one of the events I did last year, I spoke at a small networking group, and the topic was mainly about sales, but I happened to share a story. Oh, it was sales related, actually, because I'd been interviewing stylists for a while, and I used one of the conversations, one of the sales, like the consult calls I'd had with this stylist, as an example of what not to do. So I sat down with this stylist, and I was like kind of excited, right? Because I was like, okay, maybe she's the person who's going to help me like dial in my look. I was like, what is my look? I don't even know what that is. Forgot to tie my hair back. So I sat down with her, and she, like from the get-go, like it was a little bit of a red flag where I'd responded to something she'd put on Instagram, and then she sent me a link to she sent me a link to a workbook on how to make a 6-figure business as a stylist. And so I wrote back, I'm confused. I thought I was signing up for a style audit. And then she goes, oh, my bad. That was a mistake. So we scheduled a call, get on the call. She asks me, what do I want with my personal brand? And I'm like, that's a freaking good question. I don't really know, but I've always had the sense that how I'm styling myself, or like not really styling myself and just kind of showing up, which I feel like is what most people do, doesn't match my personality. I am a life coach and executive coach, and one of the standout things about me is that I am brutally honest. And I don't mean this like I'm honest in a mean or nasty way. It's just I have a tendency to be very direct, again, with no malice. Just to give you an example, like in a lot of my online content, I've gotten this comment many, many times from separate people who don't know each other, where I will write some carousel, or, I'll have some message and somebody will comment like, I feel like a giant hand just slapped me. And it's just hilarious because multiple people have said that. And so that kind of gives you an idea about my personality, right? So the woman says, what do you want for your personal brand? And I tell her, well, I would like how I dress to more accurately reflect my true personality. She goes, okay, I know exactly what that means. And I was just like, do you? Like, do you actually know? And then she proceeds to tell me, okay, so you should be dressing like this. I was like, okay, well, hang on, I have a certain vision in my head. And, honestly, I think the aesthetic that I'm after would be a lot like the people who are in Suits, if you've ever seen the show. And so at that point, I'm expecting her to say, oh, okay, well, let's pull up some reference images, because that would be the easy thing to do, because it's a show that's out there with thousands of images. She doesn't do that. Number one, she hasn't seen the show. Number two, she doesn't tell me she'll go away and look at it or look up images or even just pull up images together while we're on Zoom. No. She says, okay, I'm envisioning this certain kind of look. And I was like, okay. And now here's the kicker of what she does next. She says she's done some research on me. She's taken a look and she shares her screen and she shows me my own Instagram page, and I'm like, oh, okay. So she shows the page and she goes, your style is very nondescript. And I was so taken aback. It's just like, well, that's kind of why I'm talking to you, isn't it? I don't know why she felt the need to label that. And, I'm sure in her world, she was probably like, she was just stating the truth. But again, there is an art to being honest. So when I say I'm brutally honest, I'm not honest like that. Okay. So how she was honest when we'd barely spoken for that long, right? She doesn't know who I am. We don't really have a relationship. She has not established rapport. And again, the differences in my content. If you're reading my content, like, you've chosen to be there. You have chosen to spend your time reading my content or watching my video. I didn't just come up to you and slap you across the face without your permission. So a lot of the times, this is what I see with honesty that's unfiltered, because now we're edging into blunt. It's not direct, it's blunt. So bluntness being you're not even thinking about the impact your words have on the other person. In a lot of ways, this may be a little gross, but I promise I don't mean to be offensive. It's a lot like a premature ejaculation. That's how I see that. Anyway, so that call did not go well, and as you can imagine, I did not hire that stylist. She then resorted to high-pressure sales tactics, which just so gross. So I told a little bit of this story at this event, and there was a freaking heckler in the audience. Like, I don't even get it, okay? And he essentially was like, yeah, she's right. Like, on the part where she said my style was nondescript. And I was like, okay. So get this. After the event is over, and I'm chatting, I'm networking, it's like 45 minutes after the event has ended. This white man, and he's older, okay, and he's not dressed anything impressive, has been waiting around this entire time to talk to me. And I was like, oh, fudge. So then it's his turn to connect. And he proceeds to tell me that my style is just atrocious, that everything I'm wearing is ugly, not doing me any favors, that I should never wear these kinds of skinny jeans with what I'm wearing on top, which was like an oversized cardigan. I need to do something with my hair. I need to wear way more makeup. And then he goes, you're Korean, aren't you? You should really take a note on like how Koreans dress. They wear lots of silks and bright colors and fabrics. You need more color. You need way more makeup. So he is saying all of these incredibly offensive things to me. And I remember just being like, I felt so run over. And there was a part of me that was just like, hey, do you want to like maybe ask me for my permission before you just give me unsolicited feedback? Anyway, so going back, I had that happen, right? That event, that incident with this man who felt so entitled. And now, if we're looking at what I was first talking about at the beginning of this video, which is my husband, and he was just like, dude, what are you doing? This needs to be, yeah, spit on myself, sorry. That was gross. He was like, there needs to be more moderation. Like, how much money have you even spent? Like, how much time are you spending? And again, he's not asking me these questions to make me feel bad or to make me feel wrong. It's just there's now some real cause for concern on his part. But my God, can I just tell you, it triggered this immense wave of shame. And, I was just honest with him. I was like, this is what I do. Like, this is what I do when I feel inadequate, or when I feel like I am not getting something, or when I feel dumb even. And you might say, okay, well, isn't this what all people do when they feel like they need to catch up? And I would say yes, but to what degree? Like, what kind of feelings are really motivating this? So let me give you an example, what I mean. So in this case, as much as I talked about this incident with some of my friends, everyone, of course, agreeing with me that that was incredibly offensive, but I don't think I actually understood until just how much that really triggered feelings of shame within myself. And so then, of course, it's like, whoa, why? Like, why was that so strong? So that's generally the process kind of go through in coaching. Sometimes you'll see the same thing with therapy too, depending on the therapist. But essentially, it's like when you experience really strong emotions, it's like, what is causing that? And it's usually because you are thinking and feeling something about yourself. There was something about us having the conversation last night. It just triggered so many emotions, and I started to cry, and I was a little horrified. This is where I think it's coming from. And it's the fact that my parents used to, what am I saying used to? They still do. They constantly criticize the hell out of my appearance. They've literally, even to this day, I'm in my 40s and they still try to tell me my hair looks ugly, like a certain way, that I should pull my hair back, that I should, get my hair out of my face. For some reason, like all the comments are about my hair. But a lot of the times it'll be about other things too, like when I went to college and I gained the freshman 15, but for me it was the freshman 20. Oh my God. I have like some sort of red speck in my eye. I think it might have been because I was crying. I felt like a lot of pressure. I've grown up my entire life with very typical critical Asian parents. And if you know, or maybe you're not even Asian, but you had parents, especially the mother or somebody, constantly picking at every little thing in your self. And so for me, it was my grades, it was even how I walked, my hair, the sound of my voice. Both of my parents, they would constantly tell me, that's not attractive. That's me being nice. They would just say straight up, that's ugly. Don't walk like that. Why are you walking like that? Your voice is so annoying. You'd be so much prettier if you wore your hair like this instead of that. Why are you wearing that? When I went to college and gained weight, I came home and my mom, she literally gasped when she opened the door, and she was like, oh, I never thought you'd be one to get fat. Dinner that winter being like, she would just take away my plate before I'd eaten everything, be like, you've had enough, okay? So I know I'm making them sound like horrible monsters, and I promise you they weren't. But that's kind of the mental fuckery, okay? Because your parents love you and they're trying their best, and then they constantly pick at you with these criticisms. It's like some of that, it affects you. Sorry, I don't mean to get emotional again, but I am. This is me also realizing, there's There's some things my husband will never understand because his parents were nothing like this. At least from what I know. I asked him last night, and I don't think they ever were like this. He has a sister. And so, granted, I think parents also treat their sons differently versus how they treat their daughters. So I'm sure that's part of it. But if you just look at how my husband moves through the world versus how I move through the world, and last night, the thing I told my husband that was so difficult was he has no idea the conditioning you get as a woman in this world, how you are expected to be attractive all the time, and yet you're expected to be attractive without too much effort, because you shouldn't wear too much makeup, but apparently you need some makeup. You need to look good, but you can't, it can't be artificial. So God forbid you have plastic surgery, because then they'll say there's something wrong with you. You have mental issues. That may or may not be true. It's just the fact that people feel they have the right to comment on your appearance and constantly comment in ways to nudge you to be prettier, to be more attractive, because that's what you're supposed to be. And that was when it really came crashing down on me last night, is who says I should be that? And yet that's the obsession with fashion and styling. So I told my friend Chris that one of the hardest things with this journey, because he keeps edging me, he's trying to teach me about fashion and styling, which I'm so grateful for. And a lot of the times is he's picking out choices. Now, one, he's been a designer for forever. He's older than me, but he's also been immersed in this knowledge for so much longer than I've been. He started his fashion journey 20, 30 years ago. I don't even know. So he's already been around the block. He's so far beyond basic. And he no longer finds the conventionally pretty all that interesting, because you see millions of people like that. He's now looking for interesting, edgy, something with more flair, personality, creative. And I get that. And so I just told him this a couple of weeks ago. It's I realized the thing that was holding me back and really fully seeing with his eye is because of that compulsive conditioning I've received my entire life to want to be pretty. And that's what really sucks. So then, of course, my brain goes, pretty for whom? And number one, I'm pretty for myself, not so much other people. But then I can't deny that when you have incidents like with that stylist or with that heckler in the audience at that event, it pokes at what I didn't even realize was a wound. It definitely hurts. And so I'm telling my husband this, and he's like, you can't care what other people think about you. And he's like, of course you're pretty. And I was just like, obviously what he's saying is true. Of course, on the flip side is we all care what other people think about us. We all do. And the issue is, what do you do with that? Yeah. What do you do with that? Where is this behavior coming from? What is the root story playing through your head? And often that can be one of the hardest things to really identify. So that was a really unpleasant but liberating light bulb moment for me. Anyway, that's always a question to answer. It's what is motivating this behavior? What's going through your mind? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? And what's really the essence, the energy driving this of what you're doing? And I hate to admit this about myself, but there was this frantic energy to this entire journey. There have been a lot of positives, like more fun, getting to be creative, but if I'm being fully honest, there was this almost like scarcity energy driving this, because when I was younger living with my parents, they didn't let me do makeup, they didn't let me do any of this stuff, and yet I was expected to be pretty. Yeah, so the brutal truth is that I grew up most of my younger life just feeling ugly. And that's what was triggered. That's what was behind a lot of this frantic energy of like, no, I don't want to go back to feeling ugly. And of course, I fundamentally know that you are the decider. You get to be the judge of how you feel and how you see yourself. I'm a coach, but like all people, sometimes, you forget things. How other people treat you, it can be hurtful. And yes, at the end of the day, you get to be the one who decides whether you are hurt. I do believe that. But I will also say that you don't actually have the autonomy to make that choice until you realize where that's coming from, what these things are rooted in. So that's really the name of the game. Anyway, I hope this wasn't too rambly, but if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them below or message me directly. I'm pretty much an open book, and whatever you ask, I will answer. It just shows that we are all on a journey. And every time you come even close to thinking that you're towards the end of the journey, the universe has a way of showing you, that is not true. There's always more to learn, right? Which is kind of amazing, honestly, because otherwise life might be a little bit boring. But anyway, that's me for today. Have a fabulous rest of the week, and much love to you, and I hope this helps you. So till next time.